Well, one of the things we're worried about is the water heater.
Okay.
We're a 2-unit, so this one here is on ours.
All right, you're on the first floor.
Yep.
Okay. Well, water heaters fail someday, and it starts with understanding how old they are. So when I look here, this installer did us a nice favor. He actually told us the day he installed it. It was '06, so this is now 10 years later. But there's always a rating plate somewhere in the water heater that's going to tell you the date of manufacture. So here's the model and serial number, and I would guess that this was made in November of '03. So this looks like it might have been on the shelf for 3 years. Now there's also a listing of the warranty, how long they expect it to last, which is 6 years. So you've got a 13-year-old tank in use for 10 that they expected to last for 6. So most people wait for the water heater to fail, and there's always a big hubbub, get us right over flooded basement and everything else. This might be the best day you could ever have to change this water heater out. All right, let me go to the truck, get some tools. To get started, I need to shut off the water supply, the gas supply, and drain the water heater. I'm also going to remove some of the old gas piping and the overflow from the temperature and pressure relief valve. Okay, we also have this gas line in the way. I'm just going to swivel this pipe out of the way just enough to ooch the water heater out. That should do it right here. Next, I break the galvanized flue gas connection at the top of the water heater. I'm going to reconnect to the hot and the cold copper water lines, so it's a lot easier to clean them in place and then cut them. Once they're cut, we're ready to take this water heater out of here. All right, Kevin, say hello to your new water heater.
Hello.
All right. So you are one of the first homeowners that come under the new energy guidelines from 2015. The government wanted to reduce the amount of energy that was lost from a water heater, and most of that loss happens in what they call standby loss. Here's this 40-gallon tank. He wants to give off its heat all day long to the basement. So they did it by making more insulation. So if you look, it's the same height. It has the same cold water line right here with a dip tube that goes to the bottom. Hot water leaves right here, same flue connections, gas piping is the same. The one thing that's changed is the dimension. So you can see the old tank was just over 19 inches. This is 22, so it means you've got total 3 inches wider, which means 1.5 inches more insulation all the way around and at the top, and that's a good thing. So you got a wide open basement, no big deal. There's a couple of people that this new law is going to come into effect for that's going to be some issues. Anybody that's got a water heater that's jammed in a tight little closet, or the people that have condos, sometimes I see them jammed tight in a closet. You're not going to fit them all. The other thing is that if you have a 55-gallon or larger water heater, they now have to be so efficient you can no longer vent them into a chimney. You have to use a non-metallic plastic vent, and sometimes that can really add to the insulation. But you've got plenty of space, so it's no big deal for you. We also got you a 10-year warranty water heater. This was a 6, this was a 10, so it should last a lot longer.
Great.
All right, you ready to put her in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Why don't you take this in? Okay. Follow me. Let me just dance it in. I got it. All right, so look at this now. Remember I said it was no big deal, you had plenty of space? Look at this, the flue doesn't line up, the hot and cold don't line up because the extra width gets in the way of this concrete pad that's sticking up above the floor. So it just means a little more repiping.
Okay.
So I'm going to start by reconnecting the gas. So I'll just dry fit the old connection to the union. And that tells me that I need about 1.5 inches. It's perfect. So I'm just going to put a little pipe dope on the threads. Okay, that should do that. A little bit of piped up on the face of the union, right like that, not too much. And this is the drip cap that goes into the bottom of the T. This is a vacuum valve that would allow, if you was ever trying to drain the tank, it would allow air in so it wouldn't let the tank collapse or implode. So with this flue pipe, we have a crimped end, and that has to fit inside this fitting. So I'll hold this up, and this part has to go over this crimp. So this mark should be perfect right there. All right, so this is the overflow, and that comes from the temperature and pressure relief valve. This is a really important safety device. If the tank ever got too hot or too much pressure, it would relieve, and they wouldn't want that relief to go onto somebody, so it has to be down to within 12 inches of the floor. All right, so we are done. It's now time to put the water back on. Listen for it. Okay, and while that tank is filling, I'm going to turn the gas back on. Okay, now that's on. Now I want to do a leak test on all those new connections. If there was a leak, you'd see a bubble coming up. There it goes. All right, gas is back on, water's heating up. I've labeled the first floor. I got the date of installation. You are good to go.
Awesome. Thanks, Richard. You mind throwing your autograph on there, too?
My autograph?
Yeah. You want to sign
Really?
it?
That might drop the value of this thing. All right. I don't think I've ever done that before. I'll see you in 10 years.
Thanks. We'll see you then.
All right, thanks for your help.
Your signature, really?
Really, silly. I'm sorry. Just silly. All right, let's talk water heaters. You know, the new energy regs came in. I'm thrilled about them. They're going to make more insulation, make them a little bit bigger.
Right.
In that case, I had to add a little more piping because it hit that concrete on the bottom.
But if it didn't hit the concrete, you would have been fine,
Yeah,
right?
would have lined up and been fine.
Okay.
All right? Now, inside these things, they're increasing the amount of insulation, as I mentioned, from 3/4 to 1.5 inches, and that's great, both here and here.
Right.
But it's not going to make this huge difference because inside of a gas-fired appliance like this, it has a burner at the bottom,
Right.
a tank filled with water, and coming up through the middle is this flue pipe right here that has the flue products, right? So think about it, hot tank of water, ice cold air from the basement coming up through, it's just going right up the chimney. Much of the standby loss is not from here,
Yeah.
but up the chimney.
So it's basically a thermos bottle. They've doubled the size of the insulation, but we still have a hole running right through the bottle.
That's right. Like leaving a tent flap open.
Yeah.
You know, all the air's going to come out.
I get it.
So if you go up to over 55 gallons, you can no longer use this style of water heater. You can't use that conventional burner and chimney. Now they're going to make it so that you have to vent it through some non-metallic piping to outside, not into the chimney,
Yeah.
and bring a second line in to bring air in for combustion.
I mean, but that's a good thing, though, because the reason we have to vent it is because the burner's that much more
Super efficient, and then when the burner's off, it shuts off, which stops some of this off-cycle loss through the chimney.
So we're going to pick up some efficiencies
That's
there.
right.
But it's still a big tank.
That's right.
Right.
In electric, not much change here in the smaller units. Here's a standard electric water heater. You got an electrical element here and here. You got increased insulation. It's much like a coffee maker. You're trying to heat the water, okay?
Right.
So not much change here up to 55, but over 55 gallons, you can no longer use this style. You have to use a heat pump water heater.
So you can no longer use the elements, those two elements. You have to use this monster
That's
right here.
So this is a tank underneath here, and then above it is a heat pump. And the heat pump is really like an air conditioner in reverse,
Sure.
where it's going to find heat inside the house, inside the basement from other sources, deliver it efficiently into here, and reduce the electrical cost by about 60%.
What's this guy, though, for? This is an element, isn't it?
This is the backup element in case to make sure you always have hot water. And that should be there as a backup. And this should be most of it done this way.
So that's super efficient.
That's right.
That's great. So does it affect all water heaters? Everything's changing?
Well, the thing that doesn't change is if you have a tankless or an instantaneous water heater. This sits on the wall, gas-fired, and when you don't use hot water, it uses nothing. You can't get much more efficient than that.
No standby loss,
That's
so
right.
this one's as
You
good
could
as it
and when you
gets.
do want to take a shower, you could do it for 24 hours a day.
You know, I'm going to start thinking about, if I'm getting pushed into a model like this, I might
That's
start
right.
thinking about
That's
putting
right.
something like
That's
that
right.
in there.
That's right.
Cool. Now, so how do you get a 10-year warranty? I mean, are you buying a 10-year model versus, I want a 10-year warranty.
A lot has changed. You know, in the old days, you had a 5-year unit, and you had a different 10-year unit. And the 10-year unit had a secondary anode rod. It was built a little bit better. Now it's 1 unit, 6 years warranty.
Right.
And then you can buy an additional warranty from a manufacturer. And some manufacturers, to get the additional warranty, insist that you buy this secondary anode. Now, an anode is a sacrificial rod that sits inside. This used to be an anode right here, okay? And once that goes, this is what happens, and it goes south.
So that's how you get your extra insurance.
That's right, yeah.
In some cases,
That's
you're
right.
saying. What do the others do?
Some you're just going to buy an additional insurance policy for a couple $100.
So it's basically just a 6-year tank with a 10-year label on it.
Exactly.
And if it fails, they'll replace it.
Absolutely.
Huh, all right.